The possibilities for market expansion across segments, largely untapped by Islamic bankers, are therefore huge. Automation and digitalization have made it possible for Islamic banks to prepare themselves to capture new trade finance opportunities and get access to new segment markets. I believe that digital transformation in Islamic banking is crucial to sustain the growth momentum of the industry. And I'm very interested to hear the views of our guests today. So welcome, and let me present to Mr. Fernando Plaza and Juan Antonio Castro. Fernando Plaza is the Chief Digital Officer, the CDO for Arab National Bank, ANB, sorry. And as you know, it's a very important bank of Saudi Arabia. Prior to ANB, he held the Chief Digital Officer role in Al Rajhi Bank and VP Digital in Emirates Airlines. Fernando also has an extensive experience in digitalization in Europe, where he worked in UK in large corporations such as Joyce Banking Group and Vodafone Group. And so, welcome, Fernando. And Juan Antonio Castro is the former co-managing director of Triodos Bank, an ethical bank, a Dutch bank, and with presence in many countries in Europe. Through more than 30 years of experience in the financial and technology industries, he has inspired people to embrace change to success in digital transformation endeavors to achieve operationally optimized organizations. Currently, he's an independent professional empowering entrepreneurs and executives to effectively adopt data innovation to increase efficiencies, improve customer experience, and to create new business opportunities with sustainability in mind to realize a better world. So let us begin with Fernando, who is going to talk us about digitalization in Islamic banking, more focused in the Middle East region. So Fernando, the floor is yours, and thank you very much for joining us today. The sound, yeah.
Thank you, Gonzalo, for the kind introduction. So it's a pleasure to be with you all today. Okay, for some context about myself, Gonzalo already introduced me. I've been in Riyadh for the last 3 years, working in Islamic banking, and prior to that in several roles in relation to digital development, digital transformations, and digital growth. Okay, so the topic for today is about Islamic banking and digital transformation. The first thing to understand is the digital transformation and the banking industry is in a context of many challenges, right? So as you can see about what's going on in terms of financially, the banks are under a lot of pressure for a number of reasons, interest rates, a lot of competition in the market, and applying digital transformation to drive growth is today something that is spoken at board level and C-level in every single bank. A few years ago, it was probably something like a nice to have. Embarking on a digital transformation journey was an option for some of them, but now today is a matter of survival. And at least from my discussions with my CEO, our board, in my previous company and my current company, it's a survival matter. Okay, in terms of how banks and Islamic banks are no different to this. Okay, how banks are approaching the digital transformation journey, we can clearly see 3 to 4 phases. Okay, so any bank, actually banks are usually profitable. They usually make money by taking deposits from customers and lending money, and they have a relatively simple business model, right? So when they tackle digital transformation in these 3 to 4 phases, at the beginning, they look at digital as a mean to decrease costs. Okay, they say, okay, so we have a number of customers coming to our branches, we have a lot of operations which are very expensive, and they look at this digital transformation topic mostly from a cost reduction point of view, right? So if we can get customers using a mobile banking app, for example, to make transactions rather than coming to the branch, then actually we can decrease our branch footprint and save some costs. And this is classically how in phase 1 banks are looking into this. Okay, it's a cost reduction play, and it's actually about doing a mobile banking application for the minimum servicing capabilities. Okay, on a phase two, beyond saving costs, they go a little bit not only about saving costs with customers, but also about saving costs internally. So there is a lot of technology that we can apply internally rather than actually having to use paper for many of our operations. When you actually have to process personal loans, you have to process from the retail point of view many things: personal loans, mortgages. From the corporate point of view, you have trade financing, you have many papers that you have to process on a daily basis. They look into paperless process, they look into robotics, they look into process automation, so they can actually optimize operations, and at the end still is a cost reduction play. Okay, so phase one is a cost reduction play mostly from the customer point of view. Phase two is a little bit of cost reduction play from processes point of view. And then the banks which are starting to be a little bit more advanced, starting to go to phase three. Phase three is actually about driving growth now and driving sales. It's not so much about the cost reduction and about the cost optimization. It's a little bit more about how can now you create growth and an incremental revenue, an incremental top line with digital, okay, with digital transformation. And that's why you start to look into how can we actually drive more assets. For example, when I mean assets, I'm talking about personal loans, cards, from the retail point of view, from the treasury corporate point of view. They look a lot into payments. They look a lot into acquiring. E-commerce is very big today, so there is a lot of investment going on these days from banks into being able to enable a solid e-commerce experience, so actually merchants can actually have good connectivity for the bank with payments. And this is a little bit the phase three, which is about digital is no longer about saving money. Digital is about creating incremental revenue on top line. And then the last phase, where the least number of players are currently, maybe a little bit in Europe and maybe a little bit in Singapore and more of the advanced markets, are the transformation business model, right? So as we said at the beginning, the banks make money by taking deposits and lending money for a profit as a basic business model. But then there is now a lot of incremental revenue through partnerships, marketplaces, and ecosystems, right? For example, there is an increasing number of banks that are applying digital transformation to upsell added value services. If you apply for a mortgage, on top of the mortgage, you can get a house insurance, you can get a deal with the property developer where you can actually pay some extra fees. You can actually have a special financing for furniture. You can actually have a lot of plays around insurance. If you go to apply to get money, to borrow money to buy a car, auto lease, there is so many things that you can do. You can actually buy servicing packages. You can actually buy insurance. Again, insurance is very important, which is all part of the insurance transformation. And beyond this, there is a lot of added value services that banks are trying to tap into. And there is a lot of talk these days about open banking and partnerships and collaborations, because these can add incremental growth for the banks on top of the classic products, right? And for this, you need to transform a little bit your business model. You can no longer apply digitization from the point of view of classic banking products. You need to go beyond that, right? And just to underpin all of this, you need technology, you need people, and as we know, right, there is a shortage of highly skilled people in technology. There is a shortage of equipment due to supply chain constraints. We ourselves, as AMB, we have constraints bringing hardware and bringing servers to run our backends, because there is a supply chain constraint. We are struggling to find talented people in the technology space, and this is happening across the board, right? Especially Middle East with local talent. But that's a bit the overview. So as a top level, different phases for digitization: phase one of cost reduction, and phase two, phase three of actually looking into growth and sales, and a phase four looking into added value services, and all of these challenges that we need to overcome from the technology, people, data point of view. Okay.
Thank you very much, Fernando. I have some questions, but maybe we can let the questions for after the Juan Antonio presentation, okay? So Juan Antonio, if you want to talk about digital transformation too. So you had a presentation. Let's see if that works. You can share your screen. Also, you are mute now, so you need to put the sound. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, great.
Excellent.
Let me see. I don't know if are you.
Yes, we can see the presentation. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, just to add a little of the background, thank you for the presentation, Gonzalo. I've been in the situation in Spain to create the first values-based bank from the scratch, from a fintech mode to a full bank operation, right? Yes, and for us, just to survive in the Spanish market and even to grow aggressively at the time, they were based in two pillars. One pillar was values, it was our great hook to the market, and the second was digital. At the time, we were in some respects pioneers in the Spanish market. Can you go to the next slide, please? Well, Fernando already mentioned the different stages that the most mature part of the digitalization programs are about cost reduction, and it's about the customer experience. But what I would like to pinpoint here in my little speech is on other elements that should be taken into account, and I think, in my opinion, are relevant and are getting mature in other markets as well. So we are talking about the new shift of the banking paradigm. I would like to give a few words reflection about the humanizing the digital experience, which I think there is a digital gap in many markets. I would like to add a little bit of my passion is sustainability in relation with Islamic finance, and then quick topics about some technologies that I think are very meaningful for the new maturity steps in the digitalization. Can we move forward, please, Laura? Well, many times when we talk about digitalization, we are talking basically about creating web pages or sites or new channels or using cloud. Which is cool, but I would like to also talk about to pinpoint the digital innovation as a mean to make banks more relevant in terms of the humanized digital experience, and also to contribute to a more sustainable world, which I think align perfectly with the values of the Islamic banking. So there are three drivers to me beside the purely economic, which is and they will reflect in the digital growth, which are the banking shift, and the sustainable development, and the humanized digital experience. Can you go another one? The banking paradigm. Banking has been, if we do a very elemental sentence, banking will be about payment and financial services, which is correct. But in my opinion, banking has a greater role in society, and in that sense, this role is about making a higher level of inclusion, and this is particularly from some population segments, and also in the SMEs and the micro and small medium enterprises, which are being underserved. And also has a specific, and this is where I will say is my main, has been the main change. Additionally, there is digitalization is not just something for the banking, it's for the whole industries. And I do really believe the bank, the Islamic banking and the banks in general can have a leading and being a trigger in creating a more digital society. So banks are so some segments of the population, and I would like to pinpoint again the micro and small enterprises are underserved, or they have really difficult access to banking services. Banks can provide digital services to improve the efficiencies of the economy flows in general. For example, banks can create specific solutions for small medium enterprises. They can create financial education, financial advice, even general year solutions. Let me 1 second because I cannot see the. Give me a second because it's dancing my. There is a phenomenon that I would like also to put on reflection is the conventional banks, and the conventional banking is looking in how they can approach and compete with fintechs and neobanks in general. And there is a concept that I would like to mention here is what they call the fintechization, is when banks, in order to improve their digital programs, they adopt the techniques and the fintechs models, neobanks models, and include those models in their conventional banking, creating a synergy and providing better services and a better approach to the market. Within that, there is something called Bank as a Platform, and the Bank as a Platform is something that banks may provide via APIs and other additional services to other businesses to have a more integrative approach to the economic life, or banks can add new business proposition to the market using other banks' platforms that are not actually the core bank, the internal core banking system. Can you pass me to the next slide, please? Okay. Just a few words to mention that one of the major barriers I see and is happening in the market is it's creating some digital gaps, digital lacking, maybe because different reasons, but we need to realize that not all customers are digitally savvy, nor all customers are financially savvy. So I think there is an important role in creating a good digital banking maturity process to understand this and bring to the ecosystems, the digital banking ecosystems, brings the. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Anthony. Some kind of interference.
Oh, all right.
Go on.
It's not in my side. Well, so I was saying that. So, and banks should provide, in order to success in those in this path of the digital banking, digital maturity process, they need to provide tools and opportunities to knowledge discovery, to informal learning, and financial education, and financial advice, which is very high demand, especially for these communities. And another point I would like to make, another reflection, is about the being personal in experience. There are big implementation of the digitalization.
Mohammed, please, could you mute your micro? Mohammed Ataur?
Okay.
Okay. No.
That was all. And there is a a reflection I want to make. Many of the digital banking projects and implementations are complete in sense of different utilities, but they are poorly able to personalize the relationship with the customers, making this relationship very artificial and not human, and creating a rejection from the market. And well, that's something I thought it was important to mention about the digital banking. Next slide, please. Sustainability. Thank you. Islamic banking is a values-based banking. It's the application of the spiritual principles to the finances, right? So values and somehow sustainability is in the DNA of Islamic banking. However, I think that as there is a high market demands to be more aligned for a more sustainable world and a more sustainable development. In that sense, I want just to give a little hint that digital innovation may provide tools in two senses, to the banks in two senses. One is to better align the Sharia criteria with the SDG and SSG criteria, even automating part of the processes. And Islamic banking can empower the lending criteria to overscore those sustainable initiatives. Most of the sustainable development is based on funding in the business funds, but also banks can have an important role in this global world transformation and more sustainable world in the in the lending trade itself. And then there are some economic circular models that will be very well support from the banks, or because the finance criteria, finance policies, or just because they form part of that. There are a number of circular supply chain, recovery and recycling, product life extension, and sharing platform and process service. When sharing platform, which is a circular economic model, is something that the banks can be part of, just as I said, as banking as a platform, banking as a service, and other services, and products as a service like open banking or zakat platforms and other donation and crowdfunding and so far. So I think this is a relevant point to take into account in a digitalization journey for the Islamic banking. I would like to go to the next slide, please. I'm not going to technology. I don't think that's the photo. There are, as Fernando was mentioning in his speech about automation with RPA, IPA, open banking, and APIs, and mobile and IoT technology. There are many things, but there's only one which is related to my previous comments, is that there are semantic graphic technologies are the most advanced technologies in my knowledge to promote a pure personal experience, digital experience, so humanizing the digital experience. And this technology basically is requiring a knowledge-based creation, which by itself has multiple uses, like intelligence, personal assistants, or road advisors. I'm mentioning this here just a little tip of a little remark, technology, because most of the banks, most financial institutions, they have road advisor, chatbots, but most of them are static, are not friendly, doesn't have a personal approach, and even they are somehow very very poor efficiently talking. They don't really answer, and the question at the end they sending you to the call center, right? So that's the reason I thought it was important to mention this technology in relation to what I previously said. And just another small word. Can go to the next slide, please. Digital innovation is about changing the way we interact with the others, and therefore is about reducing the short-term throughput time and zero lapse time and typical things. But there is also a human aspect that I would like to mention, is that on one hand, we can create richer relationships by having social conversation and purpose community. That's something, in my opinion, is very important in terms of the digital innovation. There's another aspect I would like to mention, is about digital innovation allows us with open data platforms and other technologies to have further global access and further reachability to the market. For example, in investment banking now, what at least European investment banks, what they are doing is they are connecting to with local communities in terms of sustainable finance, for example, and that's done in real time just with technology. So digital innovation, just more than digital, becoming digital transformation, is just looking into the digital as in a more advanced way, can bring many benefits, not just economic, but also in terms of creating more valuable communities, creating a more rich professional life. And I think, let's go to the next one. Fernando may maybe say a word on this, but I was just wanting to give a little, you know, thought about digital innovation programs, digital transformation programs. They are in everywhere. Everybody has a digital transformation program. Where we see is that most of them are lacking in results, lacking objectives, and are lacking in the business case, in the relation between cost and benefits, economical benefits. I think it's very important for a successful digital innovation program is to work very hard in the engagement with employees and external stakeholders, and make visible for them that there is the digital is a new type, a new way of relationship, and this is not for nothing. Is to deliver continual benefits, and we need to be able to express that to our stakeholders community. What I'm seeing, and also mentioned by Fernando, is there is hard to find knowledge and talent in digital competencies. But the creation of Center of Excellence is a way to grow from scratch. Well, maybe not from scratch, but to grow slowly and internalize the transforming competencies that are a pillar for a successful digital innovation program. The digital program has to be aligned with an enterprise digital strategy, and this by itself aligned with the company strategy. And I always advise to a first systemized approach, sometimes in a top-down design of the digital innovation program or digital transformation program. Well, it's very ambitious and difficult to bring to life. So a personalized approach is always a plus and a successful and valid way to beneficial way to approach to a full digital innovation program. And I'm ending here just because I'm from Spain. I would like to say a final word is about the Islamic banking opportunity in the Spanish market. There is a growing Islamic community which needs the Islamic banking. They need bank into their own values, and there is no option here in Spain. Because it's a value base, there also a potential community will be very interested in the Islamic banking in Spain. So if any of you have a chance and a word or something to do, you are very welcome. And thank you very much to you all.
Thank you very much, Juan Antonio. Indeed, I think it's a great opportunity, Islamic banking in Spain. I know you are a kind of pioneer in Spain, transforming the banking model, and I'm sure that your experience could be very interesting, especially for some initiatives I know that are ongoing now in Spain and in Europe. So let's see what happened. I have some questions, but I would like to start with Fernando, and also for the audience, if you have any question, you can just use the chat, and I can just give you the floor after this. And Fernando, you have has been very interesting, your presentation, and I have known that you have talked about that the digitalization is a mode of survival, a mode of decreased costs, which is very, very interesting and very obvious too, and is a way to increase the revenues and adding value to your organization, to the bank. So how is the business case? How can you present this business case of digital transformation to your board or to the CEO? And is that very expensive, or how it works? What's your role, and how can you talk? How can you convince them to this process?
Thanks, Gonzalo. I think so. Digital transformation is usually expensive, right? First of all, it's expensive from the technology point of view, building people, hiring people, and the expectations and tasks aren't realistic, right? So that's why the same phases that you have during digital transformation is about cost reduction at the beginning. Okay, for cost reduction, I think it's fairly simple, and many banks, they have these calculations. Having someone going to the branch to pay the electricity bill may cost the branch perfectly between $8 to $10 as an average in terms of cost of the rent, the staff. If you do it through a mobile app, is nothing. Is cents of dollars, right? But when it comes to the point, so in that part, I think you can roughly build a business case. When it comes to the point of actually driving sales and driving growth, it's a bit more challenging, and you typically need to take the board and take the CEO through a journey, because at the beginning it's not clear, right? If you are, for example, are you driving more sales and more revenue because you have digital, or is this purely a migration? People that were planning to spend money with you in any case, they're going to be spending that money through digital, or is that incremental, and you can actually drive incremental value to the business, right? So at the beginning, the business case is about cost, and then the second part, when you actually need the investment to grow further, you need to think about being able to explain that you are going to be driving sales, and actually it's going to be better for the organization, and you need to clarify this substitutional revenue versus incremental revenue that sometimes.
And now in the Arab National Bank, if it's not confidential, of course, more or less the percentage of people using the digital channels, how are...
I think I can speak on Saudi Arabia, for example. I know in Saudi Arabia about between 60% is on the low and also 75% is on the high end of people using digital channels actively. Out of your active customers, around 70 to 75% of customers are using digital channels actively, which is very good because that, and also an average of 10 to 12, around 10% of your customer base are visiting the branches, which is healthy. So Saudi Arabia is relatively advanced on this, having 75% of people using digital and only 10% visiting the branch is a healthy index.
And there's a very hot topic here in Spain, as you may know, regarding the elderly people. Because, you know, with all this new transformation, I think one of the problems we have here is that the old people have, it's like they feel like the banks has disconnected with them because they don't know how to connect. For us, it's very easy. It's much more easy. I mean, if I need to make a transfer, I use my mobile phone, and in 2 minutes I make it. But for them, it's a problem. So in Saudi, there is any kind of, this conversation is on the table, or there is any kind of policy in your bank regarding this?
Maybe in Saudi and Middle East, the context is a bit different, right? In Saudi, 70% of the population is below 30-year-old, right? It's a very young population. So it's not happening on the same scale. But what is happening is that there is a lot of remote areas. So a lot of people live in big cities, like in Saudi, you will have Riyadh, Jeddah. In UAE, you will have Abu Dhabi and Dubai. But then there is a huge segment of the population living in remote areas. And those are typically the ones that the government and the people themselves, they are not very happy about not having branches and financial services available. So the same problem in Europe that you have with the elderly population, for the people living in remote areas which are not very well educated and not very confident with digital, they would need these sort of services, and the government actively tries to enforce bank to an extent to ensure that you have presence and you cannot decrease your branch footprint in those remote areas.
I see. It's different from here a little bit. Yeah, our population is much more elderly. It's old, so we have different problems.
If I may, Fernando, how the bank, your bank, for example, is approaching to this problem? Is just on one hand affecting that has to be a physical banking, or there are any initiative to digitize, to help to become digital to those populations?
Exactly, it's about education, right? So we are trying to do a lot of education. The branch, we have a lot of education programs in the branch for digital, and over time we see the digital penetration index decrease and the adoption increase. We see this increasing over time, but we are heavily regulated in the sense that we can obviously, maybe similar in Europe, right? We need approval from the government to decrease any branch and to actually make any changes in that sense.
Because this has happened in other industries. For example, now there's a new fashion of sending mobile telephones that are just basically telephones with WhatsApp for not digital competent people. That's what's happening, for example, in Spain and somehow Europe. So it's the same problem in a different industry.
Exactly.
And Fernando, what about the new entrants? The fintechs and these new startups, but is very common now here in Spain. I assume that also in the Middle East, that they are trying to get a piece of the market. And more we see how, for example, telecom companies and other startups are provided banking services without being a bank. So what's your opinion on how is the situation there?
The situation is similar, right? So it's something that is happening in the Middle East. You have telco players with like digital wallets, which is basically similar to having a banking account. And you have then neobanks, as Juan Antonio was mentioning, that are also coming to the market. The governments in general, they are supporting this. They are awarding licenses. They are awarding. They want to foster this technology economy. So they are fostering this, and they are actually supporting this approach. And for the banks, it's very challenging because these people, they can move a lot faster than you, first of all. they can be a lot cheaper because they don't need to actually show growth. They don't need to show financial growth. They need to show customer-based growth in order to secure funding and investment, and they can survive with this versus banks which they need to show profitability, right? The bank, so they can be offering services a lot cheaper. So what banks are doing is that they are heavily investing in digital transformation, right? The UK is a very advanced market. They went through this since the last few years, and then some banks in the UK, they are fairly advanced digitally, and they can do anything from the digital touchpoint almost to the same extent that other new players, right? And maybe that will also come to Middle East, hopefully in the future.
And Juan Antonio, I like a lot what you said about increased new segment of the population, because I think is what it happened when you were part of Triodos Bank, which was the very first ethical bank in Spain. And I think that moment in the banking system in Spain was quite important and relevant. And do you think it's gonna exist the possibility to make to replicate that model 20 years later regarding Islamic banking in Spain, with maybe with creating a neobank or trying to make possible for Muslims in Spain to be aligned with their values through a bank?
I think there is a great opportunity for Islamic banking in Spain. There is a growing demand, there is a growing consciousness about the values general in society, and the Muslim community is not observed. They cannot align with their values, which are religious based, and they cannot well comply with that, and that's a problem. So the opportunity is wonderful. What changed in the scenario 20 years ago for now is that now making a new bank is much cost efficient. You can having a financial banking operation in a relatively very low cost versus in the past with the license and other minimum requirements for the authorities was expensive by definition. Some bank banks as a platform are even providing well services to new banks in the Islamic banking. That's a nice thing to study. So the opportunity is huge. That's why I wanted to call the attention to all the audience about that.
Yes, things are changing a lot, but I think the challenges are still there, and we'll see what happens. But for me, I receive every month one or two LinkedIn messages regarding this, that people want to have a Islamic bank in Spain, or they're always asking me how they can buy a house in a Sharia compliant way. So and I hope that this maybe with a neobank could be solved in the near future. I don't know if there is any question for the audience. You can use just the chat or just talk if you have. In the meanwhile, I have been reading a report from the IFSB, which is an important organization of the Islamic banking industry, and regarding the challenges that are facing the digitalization, they say that they identify through a survey of the CEOs of the industry 4 main challenges. One is the legacy infrastructure, technologies that impede quick, innovative response to changing markets and competition. The second is the lack of human resources availability. The third is lack of open banking initiatives and architecture. And the fourth is budgeting constraints. I don't know, Fernando, if you think that these are the most important challenges of the industry? Or what are the most important challenge that you are facing in your day-to-day?
I think I agree with most of that, right? Human people, we talk about it, right? Finding the right people, and especially just for context, right? In this market in the Middle East, they try to foster like a local talent, which also is another source that is very scarce, right? There's not a lot of them going around. Technology, definitely. I think architecture in general is technology. The technology, banks need to deal with legacy, and legacy means that you need open banking, you need open APIs, and then funding is the same. Funding is, there is a constrained context of investment. There is an increasing amount of investment in technology that the banks needs to do. There is some best practice about how much of your revenue you should invest in technology. There is some standards, and that is increasing and increasing over time, which is decreasing the profitability. So all of those are definitely very, very challenging issues. Alongside, and I will add to that, the speed to market, right? So all these telcos, all these fintechs, all these new entrants, they go very fast. They go very, very fast. And banks are going very slow. And every time that banks wants to catch up on something, it takes months, versus one of these small companies, they can do everything quicker because they are not so regulated. They don't have the legacy infrastructure issues, and they don't have the governance, and they have different ways of working. So probably the speed of delivery, I will add it as a challenge.
Yeah, indeed. There's like sometimes a bank is like an elephant, and the startups are like a fox, no? So let's see.
And telcos, see the case of the Orange Bank. Orange Bank and Movistar Bank, they are delivering loans, small loans to micro SMEs in real time, and they are doing all the scoring without any banking facility, just their own means and their own data. Just a case to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And regarding the risks, following this survey that I have been reading those days, I have seen, or I have identified, because they say so in this survey with CEOs, three main risks. One is cybersecurity risk, which is also very hot topic. Data quality issues. So we talk about data integrity risk, and anti-money laundering risk, and cloud concentration risks. Are those also in the bank, Fernando, the main risks you identify, or there is other that you feel are on the table in the bank now?
Definitely. I think probably to a different degree. Cybersecurity is on the table every day, right? And actually, most banks, it's not so much about the cybersecurity that you get attacks from, and this happens, right, from North Korea. All of these things happen, right? They are not, and we see in our own bank happening, cyber attacks. Is mostly the social engineering challenges. Social engineering is someone calls you over the phone to get your password, and banks lose a lot more money through that than through technology risks. So this is definitely a challenge. Data also, the data is also a fairly important topic, right? Banks are in general behind in the data play, right? So those two are definitely very important ones, and the banks are heavily investing to solve those. Okay.
Cybersecurity now is not only in banking, in everywhere. I think we are facing a lot of risks regarding this, and we'll see. We know that it's an industry with a vertical growth. So I was talking with a company a few days ago, a cybersecurity company, and they told me that the industry is a vertical growth. They cannot manage the situation sometimes. So maybe if you want to invest, it's a good advice to invest in those companies now, because I think it's the future. And so I think just to finish, digitalization is about, we're talking about how to grow the industry, is the future indeed. And the answer is how to respond to customer structure and expectations. So I hope that the industry is facing this reality in the best way, and I think we're gonna see a lot of changes in the industry, in the Islamic banking industry in the coming years or months for sure. So if you have any questions, we can just stop here. And Allah, you have any question?
Yes, please. I was curious about not only the challenges in terms of cybersecurity. However, when we speak about banking going into digitization, so what types of challenges we are facing in terms of internal fraud by bank employees and let's say information leakage with more digital solution we are having. So based on that, does digital transformation have an increase in different types of internal fraud, information leakage in the banks, or that's being already mediated and digital transformation makes it less than the normal trend?
I think if I may answer the question, Gonzalo, I think that's definitely a risk. Alad, you are absolutely right. I think technology is slowly solving that through security controls, through limited access to data, and I think banks are getting better on that. I think when you talk about the cybersecurity topic, that's one topic. The other one is pure attacks and data leakage that happen, but at least something that I think, for what I've seen, where the banks are suffering the most these days for the last year or so, last couple of years, is what I mentioned is social engineering attacks, right? So the banks are losing less money through hacking their own system. The banks are losing far more money because people are calling their customers and getting hold of their passwords through different means and accessing their accounts by stealing passwords and actually sending money away. And this is something that the banks need to get a lot better by, and the technology can solve this, and the technology is solving this, right? If you access from a device that you never accessed before, things like this, right? So this is over time is getting better and better.
Yes, thank you. Especially with the multi-factor authentication and the biometric authentication these days. So because this is something I'm personally facing with the mobile wallets. I'm working in a telecom company that has a digital wallet solution. So more and more KYC fraud we see with the digital transformation. So new challenges come. So I totally agree with the social engineering part. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Alan. Okay, if there is no more questions, we can just finish here. And just to finish, thank you very much, Fernando and Juan Antonio, for your time and for accepting our invitation. And we hope to continue our collaboration in the future. Okay, so and thank you very much for everybody to be here today.
Thank you to everybody.
Okay. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.